She stood in the ashes with her arms crossed, smirking like she had won. My kids were crying behind me, our dog barking at the smoke, and Karen had the nerve to say, "This is what happens when you don't follow HOA rules." I clenched my fists, but I didn't shout back because I knew something she didn't. The fire trucks had barely left when she placed a fake notice on the one wall that was still standing, claiming I owed fines for not keeping my property clean. I almost laughed at the insanity. She had burned my house and now she wanted me to pay her. My neighbor whispered, "Man, you can't let her get away with this." I just nodded, my eyes fixed on Karen. She thought she owned me. She thought the HOA was untouchable. But in that moment, while she paraded around like a queen, I knew exactly what was coming. And a week later, when she swaggered into my courtroom, it was my turn to smile. The courtroom doors creaked open and there she came, heels clicking, sunglasses on like it was her red carpet moment. Karen walked in with a folder full of fake HOA papers, holding her chin high. She didn't even glance at me or my kids sitting quietly in the front row. Instead, she strutted to the plaintiff's table and dropped her papers with a loud smack, like she was already certain of victory. The judge entered and everyone rose. Karen didn't just stand, she posed like the whole room was her audience. "Your Honor," she started before the judge even spoke, "this man has been a nightmare for our community. He refuses to follow HOA rules and now his burned-down home is an eyesore. We demand he pays fines and removes his property." The courtroom went silent. My lawyer leaned closer and whispered, "Let her talk, she doesn't know who she's up against." I kept my face blank, but inside I was boiling. She hadn't even been accused yet of setting the fire, and here she was trying to flip the blame on me. The judge raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying his house is a nuisance?" Karen smirked. "Exactly, Your Honor, we're here to restore order to the neighborhood." That's when I slowly slid a flash drive onto the table in front of me. Karen's eyes flicked to it for the first time, and I saw her fake confidence falter for just a second. The judge adjusted his glasses, looking at me. "Do you have anything to present?" I stood up slowly, my palms steady on the table. "Yes, Your Honor, I have evidence that may explain why my home is gone." The clerk plugged in the flash drive and the big screen behind the judge flickered to life. The first clip rolled, grainy night footage from my security camera. Karen, in her bright red jacket, creeping around my porch with a gas can. The room gasped. My kid's eyes widened, my neighbor covered his mouth, and even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Karen shot up from her seat. "Objection, that's fake, he edited that," but the judge raised his hand to silence her. "Sit down, ma'am, let the footage play." Next clip, Karen striking a match, the fire spreading fast, her running off with a smile. The courtroom was dead quiet except for the sound of the crackling flames on screen. Karen's face drained of color, but she forced a laugh. This is harassment, he's setting me up, I'm the victim here." I turned to her, calm as ever. "You burned my children's home, and you thought no one would ever see it." The judge leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Mrs. Karen, are you denying that's you on camera?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked cornered, trapped. For the first time, her power slipped. Karen's hands trembled as she tried to shuffle her fake HOA papers, but the judge slammed his gavel once. "Enough games, this footage is clear." My lawyer stood now, his voice steady. "Your Honor, not only do we have video proof, we also have eyewitness testimony." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and in walked my neighbor, Mr. Collins, retired firefighter, well-respected, the kind of man the jury trusted instantly. He took the stand, hand on the Bible, and said in a firm voice, "I saw her. I saw Karen outside with the gas can that night. I smelled it. She was laughing when the fire started." Karen shot up, pointing at him. "He's lying, they're all lying, this is a conspiracy against me." Her voice cracked, desperation creeping in. The judge narrowed his eyes. "So, Mrs. Karen, not only is there security footage, but a sworn witness saw you at the scene. Care to explain?" Karen's mask broke completely. She slammed her palms on the table, shouting, "You don't understand, I own that neighborhood, I make the rules." The courtroom erupted with murmurs, people shaking their heads. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. "This is a court of law, not your playground, and from where I'm sitting, it seems you abused your position to terrorize this family." I looked at her calmly, then at the judge. "Your Honor, my kids slept in a shelter because of what she did. She didn't just burn wood and walls, she tried to burn our lives." Karen's face turned pale. She slumped back in her chair, realizing for the first time she wasn't untouchable. The judge tapped his pen against the bench, then nodded to the bailiff. "Bring them in." Two uniformed officers entered the courtroom, real cops, not the fake rent-a-cops Karen usually paraded around. The moment she saw them, her face twisted with panic. "No, no, no, you can't do this, I'm the HOA president," she shrieked, backing away from the table. The officer calmly pulled out a set of handcuffs. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for arson, fraud, and harassment." Karen tried to bolt for the exit, but another officer blocked her path. The whole courtroom was watching, phones raised, recording every second. She thrashed, shouting, "This is illegal, I make the rules, he should be the one arrested." I stood there, silent, letting her words hang in the air. Then the judge looked directly at her and said, "Rules don't matter when you break the law, and today, the law caught up to you." The click of the handcuffs echoed through the room. Karen's screams grew weaker, her voice breaking as she was led out past my kids who clutched my arm. My daughter whispered, "Daddy, is it over now?" I knelt down, kissed her forehead, and said quietly, "Almost, sweetheart, almost." As the courtroom slowly emptied, whispers followed me down the aisle. Reporters swarmed, flashing cameras, asking how it felt to finally beat her. I didn't answer, I was saving that moment. When we stepped outside, Karen was still in the police cruiser, screaming through the glass like a trapped animal. She saw me and yelled, "You'll regret this, I'll sue you, I'll take everything you own." I just smiled because here was the part no one knew yet. I pulled out a thick leather folder and handed it to the news crew. Inside were land deeds, ownership records, and HOA filings, every single document proving that the land Karen had ruled over never belonged to her. In fact, the entire neighborhood was still under my family's trust. She had been running her little kingdom on property she didn't even own. The crowd gasped as the papers were held up. "So you're saying," one reporter started. I cut him off. "She wasn't the president of anything, she was just a trespasser with a clipboard and a loud mouth." My neighbor chuckled under his breath. My lawyer smirked. Even the cops escorting Karen looked at her with disgust. Karen froze, her wild eyes darting from face to face as the truth sank in. Everything she thought she controlled was mine all along. Reporters kept filming as the court ordered immediate hearings to dissolve the bogus HOA. The judge signed papers that day that froze Karen's accounts and put a lien on her house. People who once nodded at her now turned their backs. Karen stood on the courthouse steps and tried to shout, "I was protecting the neighborhood," but the crowd only laughed. A few neighbors who had stayed quiet for years came forward on camera, stories of threats, of fake fines, of fear. The city opened an investigation into her fake badges and the company that sold her the fake enforcement stickers. We didn't gloat. I went home with my kids and found a stack of envelopes on the porch: donations, offers to help rebuild, even letters from strangers who had seen the footage. My old unit buddies sent tools and volunteers. My neighbor, Mr. Collins, organized a team to clear debris. I told everyone one thing when they asked how to help: we rebuild together and we teach our kids we don't let bullies win. The final twist came when Karen's so-called board voted to remove her from any HOA role because there was no legal HOA to remove her from. The judge ordered her to pay restitution, banned her from approaching my property, and the state charged her for impersonation and insurance fraud. She had always wanted power without responsibilities. Now she had penalties and a public record. On the day volunteers raised the new foundation, cameras filmed my youngest planting the first sapling. I stood there in plain clothes and a reporter asked if I felt satisfied. I thought of the smoke, the nights in a shelter, the small voice that asked if we'd be okay. I said, "I fought to protect my family and my land, that's all that matters." People cheered, not for revenge but for justice and for family. That night, as the new beams of my house stood strong against the sunset, I sat on the porch steps with my kids. For the first time in weeks, they laughed without fear, chasing the dog around the open yard. The smell of fresh wood replaced the memory of smoke, and I finally breathed easy. News outlets kept replaying the trial footage, Karen screaming in court, then being dragged out in cuffs. People across the country sent messages: veterans, single parents, families who had fought their own battles with crooked HOAs. They said my fight gave them hope. One letter stood out. A boy from another state wrote, "My mom cried when she saw you stand up to her. She said you reminded her of my dad, who's in the army. Thank you for showing us we don't have to be scared." I folded that letter and put it in my wallet, because this wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who ever got pushed down by someone who thought they were untouchable. As the sun dipped low, my daughter climbed onto my lap and whispered, "Daddy, are we safe now?" I hugged her tight and said, "Yes, sweetheart, nobody will ever take our home from us again." And with that promise, I looked at the land I'd fought to protect, the freedom I'd earned, and the family I'd kept safe. Justice had been served, the truth exposed, and for once, silence felt like victory.